I'm back, bitches. Here we go.
Fuck.
All right.
Nice.
All right. I'm glad you got it. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Politipop Podcast, the podcast where we take your favorite pop culture media and discuss the social and political themes within. I'm your co-host, Mike Booch, a.k.a. the Soy Boy Pseudo-Intellectual, a.k.a. Comrade Soy Boy, and I'm going to a fancy party. You know what I'm going to need? I'm going to need my tie.
Hey, what's up, man?
Dude, I'm so happy to be here, but before you and I get into it, I want to let everybody know, if you're listening on YouTube, please make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel, and for all of you at home, no matter what you're listening on, rate and review, absolutely free. We really appreciate it. But also important, I'm going to mention at the end of the episode too, if you're listening to this and you enjoy this podcast, here's some homework for you. Tell one person about it. One person you know, one friend, one family member. Maybe it's somebody who does need to be radicalized, or maybe it's somebody who just likes the same movies and shows that you like. In which case, hey, I know you loved Fury Road when it came out. Listen to this episode about it. By this point, we have a pretty solid catalog of like a bunch of shit that we've reviewed.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Yeah, there's like one thing for everybody. Or if you're just like, hey, if you're into news and, people having just as much of a clue as the mainstream media does, go to any of our housekeeping episodes. But yeah, so I want to let you know, Ty, that I listened to the official Lovecraft Country podcast brought to you by HBO. That's right.
What?
I listened to a couple of the episodes today.
You cheated on us.
I did. Lovecraft Country Radio. And the show's awesome because not only does it have your regular host, but also they have guests from the actual show. So like writers, producers, actors. So they have a lot. They basically do what we do, but way better, because they're like, oh, here's what I was trying to convey about racism when I wrote this scene. And I'm like, oh, fuck, that's a good one. I didn't even catch that.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so anyone, if you're listening to this because you like Lovecraft Country, or maybe you just want to learn a little bit more about Lovecraft Country, the show, and not just our interpretations of it, then listen to that podcast because it's very insightful.
Definitely.
But that being said, we are ready to review episodes 9 and 10 of Lovecraft Country. We started Lovecraft Country in September. We're here now, Ty. How does it feel?
It's the end. It's truly the end.
You could say we're going full circle. The name of the last episode.
We are. And I got to be honest, I don't know if I want to keep watching the show.
They're going to do another season?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, I probably won't. I mean, unless it's for the podcast.
I'm kind of happy with like where it ended, and like
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, and it's not because the show is bad in any way, shape, or form.
No, it's not my favorite, but I do enjoy it.
And because I like shows that are not as good as this one. Like I loved Titans, right?
Right.
And it's definitely not as good of a show as Lovecraft Country, at least in my opinion. But I think for me personally, there were a couple things that were getting in the way. The one is I'm not familiar with the Lovecraft lore, so I wasn't really able to appreciate it from that angle. And the other thing is we took a break, so the momentum kind of died for me. We went strong through, what did we do? We did the first 6 episodes, and then we went through an entire month of horror movies. Then we went through an entire month of indigenous specific movies, and then went back to Lovecraft Country. And we're in the middle of December now. Yeah. So, which we're probably going, despite our anti-capitalist rhetoric and our anti-religious rhetoric, at least mine, we're going to do a couple of Christmas movies this month. And we'd have been done with it by now if it weren't for my ass. So, so there we go. But
true. For me, like, the show touches on some great subjects. It it gets really weird sometimes, and I think it loses focus a little bit on the plot, and like does like little side stories, and sometimes they're really successful, and sometimes they weren't as successful for me. And I think a lot of the horror elements didn't always work. Though I did enjoy them in the last few episodes, as I did mention the last podcast we did. But yeah, I think it tried some bold stuff. It went some places I don't think a lot of other shows have gone, and will ever go. So I gotta give them props for that. And it was definitely quite the journey. And these last two episodes were very, very interesting.
And in listening to the Lovecraft podcast, which is how I'm going to refer to it as that, you do hear a lot of the intentions behind certain moments and behind certain characters, because the creators are telling you what it was, and I'm like, oh wow, that's really cool. But some of those things just weren't conveyed to me.
I mean, it happens, right? Like, we're working on a film actually on the side, and there were certain scenes in that I thought were conveying something they weren't, right? And then, our editor got back to us and was like, cut it. So, it definitely happens. What you think you're portraying on the screen doesn't always come across that way to viewers. And it might be, depending on the person or, the audience, but it definitely happens. So I understand that.
It's interesting you say that, because I was thinking about it earlier today. How you and I are like, no, I'm pretty sure we know better, but our editor literally works in Hollywood and has edited Hollywood movies.
Yeah, he's literally in the industry. I went to school for it and worked on a couple side projects, and that was about it. And you do some acting, so that's cool.
Yeah, right. I am involved in the business,
right? But he's been in it a lot longer and a lot more, involved. And hopefully he'll be a guest on the podcast in the future, because I'm sure he has some great insight into some stuff that we could ask him about.
Oh yeah, what episode did he want to be on again? What do we want to review with him? Or do we just want to talk? Because we could do.
Oh, Lady Antebellum. He literally worked on. Oh, not Lady Antebellum.
It was just Antebellum.
He'll always be Lady Antebellum to me.
You remember back in the Lady Antebellum era?
Those bastards.
Oh God. Did you what? Nah, let's just keep it. Fuck it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's right. So yeah, when we do the Antebellum episode, we'll have him on then. Why not?
Yeah, definitely. He's gonna have some great insight. He's worked with a lot of different people in the industry. He's heard a lot of things, and he'll have some good things to tell us about. But yeah, so here we are at the end of Lovecraft Country, and I'm excited to discuss these last two episodes, especially episode 9. That one in particular I thought was very strong, and it's got some great stuff, got some quotes. I'm ready, man. I'm ready.
You know what else is ready? I'm hearing it right now off the distance.
Oh my God. Is it a spoiler warning?
You know what? It is a spoiler warning. Yeah, I hear it right now. It's saying that it's ready. So guess what? If you're listening to this podcast, I mean, we're catching up late to these episodes. So if you haven't, for some reason, you haven't watched Lovecraft Country episodes 9 and 10 yet.
Shame on you.
If you haven't finished the season, definitely do it now, because a spoiler alert is in full effect. A spoiler warning for the Eastern Seaboard. Okay?
Oh man, here we go.
But yeah, so as we mentioned in the last episode, there was a case where where Topsy and Bobsy, the Pickaninny demons, were sicked on Dee, who is the daughter of Hippolyta, who as of this moment in the show is missing in action. We know where she is, but the main character sure as hell don't. And also the late George Freeman, who ran the Safe Negro travel business. So Dee is sick. She's being cursed by this magic, and while Christina / what was her guy name again?
She's using the body of William, right?
William, that's right. I was gonna say Titus, but Titus is the guy who started this whole thing, and we'll get to him next episode. So Christina comes in, kind of makes it seem like there's a bit of a favor she's throwing out there, but as we know, and I think this was also done on purpose, that she is a privileged white person who is helping out these these black people who are kind of inexperienced with magic, but there's a price to it. And we get to that. I mean, they were saying in the beginning of the series, the whole price is that she wants immortality, and the premonition, the prophecy says that Atticus is going to die because his blood will help her attain that immortality. Like that's That's her thing.
Yeah, they basically been trying to kill him since like the first 2 episodes, right? Like that's
yeah,
poor guy.
they have been, and you know, it's even prophesied in the book written by Atticus's own son in the future that Atticus dies during this spell. But that's episode 10. In episode 9. Christina helps, you know, kind of with a temporary spell, like, you know, but they're going to need to find the Book of Names, which was lost in Tulsa, I believe. So they have to use the trans-dimensional time machine, whatever you want to call it, in order to go back to the night the Book of Names was lost. And right. Atticus, Letty, and Montrose all go, but not before Hippolyta comes back in. Hippolyta comes through, and she's like, and so cool. It doesn't matter what she says, but I love what she says because she's like, I was on Earth 504. I've seen it. Well,
it's very DC Universe to me, you know.
It is. It's DC Universe meets Stephen King, and and it's great. And you know what? I'm gonna take just a quick second to mention that the parts I loved about this show, like you said, the historical stuff, the social commentary, but the characters were my favorite. And I think they kind of let me down with a few of them. And that's why it's a little bit of a bittersweet thing for me. And once again, listen, I don't know better than fucking Jordan Peele or Misha Green, all right, or even Journey Smollett, right? Like I don't know better than any of those people. I just see as a viewer and as a reviewer, if you will. Is that what review means?
What?
To review something?
Oh my God! Yeah,
my God. But yeah, so Hippolyta, for example, became my favorite character in episode 7, and I didn't see necessarily an awful lot of follow through with that. That's why, like, if they would have had,
it was a means to an end, I think, just to do this episode, really, like that in a way, you know, getting her these cosmic abilities and knowledge just so she can, you know, help them get back to Tulsa. She also has the worst timing imaginable because, the only way to save Dee is to use, I think, the blood of her closest relative. You know, so Atticus says to his dad, like, oh, it's got to be you. And that's when his dad was like, oh, George might be your father. You know, and it's really fucking awkward. And Atticus is so frustrated. He's so angry. You know, we've talked about it in the podcast that, you know, he hates his father. Like, he really despises him. He has a lot of bad memories of being beaten and just abused by him, you know, and all these fond memories of his Uncle George and just getting along with him so well. And then to find out that George might have actually been his dad, and he took all these beatings and suffered all this time for nothing, for a man that might not even be his father. It's almost too much for him to take, you know. And I think his dad realizes this, and you know, it's hard. That's why he's held it secret for so long. He doesn't want to let him know this. He wants to hang on to him being his son.
And on that topic of bloodlines, they mentioned it in the podcast, kind of talking about, about the idea that you can find family without actually being related to them. And I mean, you know, that's my whole deal. That's been my entire life. And, you know, it takes a village. Yeah, it is. It takes a village to raise a child and all that. But it also kind of reminded me of how this idea of bloodlines is, at least in my research, inherently a white concept. And, you know, this magic, it seems to have taken on a white identity, and I think that's kind of why, you know, because when indigenous people were you know, living in their societies, it was a little bit more loose in terms of relationships. And yeah, like if you see a kid crying, you're gonna pick up that kid because they're part of your village, not because oh, that's my physical child and I wouldn't help them otherwise. No, the mentality was you're part of the tribe, you're family. And also because there was kind of a non-monogamous nature in certain cultures, they might have been your kid and you're not sure. And so might as well help them. You know, treat every kid like they're your kid because, well, we're all fucking. That's the most articulate way I can possibly put it. But yeah, bloodlines were introduced as a means to secure an heir because for women, you know that kid is yours, you know, or nowadays you could say individuals who have uteruses that that kid's yours when they come out of you. But the idea of maintaining virginity and only having one partner and securing the bloodline comes from a royal thing. It's a Eurocentric thing. So I just wanted to throw that in there as well. But yeah, so we do have the idea of like, oh, it does have to be your closest relative, and oh, I also wanted to make a note, just from a nerd perspective, that if Hippolyta was indeed time traveling, because she said she was on Earth 504 for the equivalent of 200 years.
Yeah.
On our Earth, and she goes back and forth in time, she could have just come back before Dee was attacked by the Pickaninnies. Like, she still could have lived her entire infinite experiences of knowledge, wisdom, and adventure and discovery, and still could have come back before that moment. I just want to say that
you can't change the past, though. Like, I think in this world, the future is always determined, and the past is always determined. And I think they prove that later in the episode, that what's meant to be is always going to happen. And she was more of jumping between universes, I think, than time traveling.
So it was more realities than
yeah,
time.
It was very Dark Tower-esque, you know. She was going to an alternate world.
Yeah, they did do that
of
shit
this.
in the Dark Tower too, didn't they?
Yeah, you know, and later on we'll see in Tulsa that you can't change the past no matter, you know, how much you want to. It's going to wind up being the same anyway.
That's sloppy to me. Not sloppy writing. It's interdimensional travel, not time travel. I had confused it kind of with time travel, and
gotcha.
So that's more on me, because
I mean, clearly she can time travel, yeah, but only with the machine, it seems. So I'm not sure, you know. It's weird.
Yeah, because hypothetically, in any time travel story, you can send the person back and then know within a second whether or not they succeeded.
Yeah,
like that. Like that's, you should know right then and there whether or not they succeeded, because that's just how it works. But whatever. Let's get into the actual show. For those of you who weren't here for our watch-on episodes, I want to go into a brief history of the Tulsa Race Massacre, and Nerdist has a really good breakdown of not just how Lovecraft Country deals with it, but also how Black Wall Street even came to be. So I'm just going to read an excerpt from that with your permission, Ty.
Sure. Sounds good.
Yeah. Guys, Ty runs everything behind the scenes. I know you don't think he does, but he really does. All right. But yeah, so I'll go through it. In 1906, a wealthy Black Arkansas native named O.W. Gurley moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma. He purchased 40-plus acres of land for Black people to have a thriving place of their own. So, just stopping real quick there, that's the fucking dream right there, right? Like, if I had the money, first thing I would do is buy land and start a fucking commune there. Like, start a commune where, you know, where we can work together for a better society, and we can be, you know, we could be prosperous there. Like, that's
you never can, because the government will always stop you. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'd say dream, because it's a dream. By 1921, more than 10,000 of Tulsa's Black residents resided in the city's Greenwood neighborhood. Greenwood was a hub of hope and prosperity in an otherwise segregated and perilous world. There were shops, entertainment and cultural centers, a post office, schools, and more. The busy area of Greenwood Avenue, aka Black Wall Street, was a place where the powerful black dollar could circulate within the community. If you want to know more about circulating dollars between certain communities and certain ethnicities, the show Trigger Warning with Killer Mike on Netflix, it's a docuseries, has a really good episode about that, where he only decides to buy from Black-owned businesses, and like he starves for 3 days straight, pretty much, because where he is, I think he's in Georgia too. He's in Atlanta, and still, like, he has so much trouble buying from Black-owned businesses, because like that's how crippled historically Black business owners are, and you know, part of that comes from what I'm talking about here with the Tulsa Race Massacre. This put money directly into the Black people's pockets, helping them build wealth and ownership. Many people were living affluent lifestyles, which garnered contempt from white Tulsa residents. And, you know, according to History.com, there was a young man, he was a teenager named Dick Rowland. He was a Black teen who rode in an elevator with Sarah Page, who was a white elevator operator. Oh, I didn't know that she was the one working it. Interesting. She ran out of the elevator screaming for no discernible reason while Roland left the scene. And as I mentioned in the Watchmen episode, they accuse him of sexual assault. They arrest him. A lynch mob comes, and the sheriff refuses to turn him over. A bunch of Black people from Greenwood come to take him back. And there's some words that are shared, and those words turn to violence. People are shooting guns and stuff. So they head back to Greenwood, and that's when it happens. White Tulsans, some with weapons, came into Greenwood shortly after sundown and began to wreak havoc. They burned property, stole and shot people on sight throughout the night. By the morning of June 1st, hundreds of people were injured, thousands were displaced from their homes, and a disputed amount of black people, ranging from approximately 26 to 200, died. And it's interesting that later on, I'm sure a bunch of those people's ancestors would go to talk about how fucked up rioting and burning property is. Fucking assholes.
Yeah, right?
So
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's always the people that are talking about history too, though, right? Like these are the biggest history buffs. Oh, the July 4th is the best fucking thing, and oh my god, is that how people sound?
You sound like Comrade.
But you fucking hillbilly fucks. Ride my bike.
If you're a hillbilly Comrade, we love you. All right.
No, yeah, of course. No, and I do think that also that caricature is also classist, but that's a whole different thing. Go to move left. But yeah, so the article goes on to just talk about how even like black press, in addition to black businesses, like were crippled for generations after. Like it could never be rebuilt the same ever again. Now, where does this play into Lovecraft Country? Well, this was the night that the Book of Names was lost, and this is kind of this is the watershed moment. This is a defining moment for Atticus's parents and uncle, because they were all there that day.
Yeah. I mean, this shapes Montrose's character completely. It's something that's haunted him his entire life. Before this and leading up to this has haunted him. And again, we did discuss Tulsa a little bit in Watchmen, and you just gave, a great summary of some of the stuff that happened, and I think just seeing it on screen is just so jarring, and I remember when Watchmen came out and people saw this, they really didn't realize like how true this was. You see literally airplanes bombing the city, and you're like, this can't be real. But it is. It really happened, and it's an important part of history that I think is just not talked about enough.
Yeah, people dropped bombs on American soil against fellow Americans who they didn't see as Americans because they were black.
Yeah.
But
it's ironic because they want them to stay with their own people, right? So they always say, like, stick to your own, like, stay away from our neighborhoods. But
they did.
They attacked their neighborhood, right? Like they had built their own city where they could function on their own and not have to, interact as much with white people. And they still came and destroyed it, and displaced them and put them into other places. And it's just like, they just, I think it's so hard to see someone that you blame for your own difficulties that you just don't like doing better than you or doing well. And, there were some really, really angry white people that came here and, attacked these people. And, we get to see what happened that night in this episode, and we get to see how it affected, specifically, like you said, Montrose, George, and Atticus's mother.
In the Lovecraft podcast, Misha Green mentions, and I didn't know this, that they found out that the night of the Tulsa massacre took place on some kids' prom nights.
Yeah.
Which is why they put it into the show. Like, this was the night that George Freeman was supposed to take Dora, who would later become Atticus's mom, was supposed to take her to prom. Like, could you imagine? Could you imagine this is the night you're supposed to go to prom and the worst thing to ever happen happens? Like, I don't, does that make it worse? Does that make it more traumatizing? Probably, yeah. I remember, I've had some bad moments, but when they happened on holidays as a kid, I know that they were worse because those were supposed to be happy days. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like and we see it in the show. They're just like, oh, your prom was just canceled, and it's like, what? What do you mean? Like, it's sad, and you already see it affecting everyone in the city, even before the actual massacre happened.
Oh yeah, so speaking of the prom, there's this moment. So they finally go back in time, and Montrose's whole experience. He's reliving his trauma here. Not only and you know what? This explains why he's such a history buff, where he always has to bring up history. Like he's like, oh, I remember my daddy whooped my ass so bad because it was the day of the 1921 Tulsa massacre. like he'll never forget. But yeah, you know, it opens up on Montrose getting his ass kicked by his father because he was trying on George's suit for prom.
Right.
And not only that, but like he was made fun of for being feminine because he there was a flower, which is just it's a boutonniere.
It was, of course, yeah, and he was wearing it, I guess, in his hair or something, right? Like, I don't know.
Well, I think he just either. You know what? We might have to look. So the corsage is for the girl to wear on her wrist.
Right.
So maybe he was just holding it, or like we don't see that. We just see him getting his ass whipped, or maybe he just put the boutonniere on his lapel.
Well, he says you want to prounce around with a flower in your hair. I think his dad says
he does say that. I'm not sure if it was actually in his hair because his dad was an asshole. But but he says that as he whoops his ass, and you know, Dora and George are there trying to. Well, Dora's there trying to defend him. George, on the other hand, is kind of like, you know, it was my dad. You know, it happens.
Which is also interesting, right? Because I think Montrose had called George out on this and never standing up for him, you know, and Dora does bring this up too, right? She stands up for him, and then she's like, oh, it always seems like your brother's the one taking, you know, more lickings than you are, you know, why don't you do anything about it? And, you know, kind of calling George out on this, and you can see he's nervous, you know, he's probably scared of their father too, and doesn't necessarily want, you know, to take that kind of abuse.
And this is difficult, I think, for everybody, because it's like, how do you go back and, you know, and we do find out that they can intervene, like they can, like, physically interact and alter time if they choose to. And,
they?
Yes and no. We'll get to that.
Yeah. Well, you know, what's interesting here, though, is like Montrose, you really understand him because he says, as he's watching this happen, he goes, I deserve this. Like, he really believes that he deserves it. You know, Letitia's like, no one deserves that. And it kind of makes you realize, you know, he is so ashamed of being gay. He's so ashamed of that he really believes that he deserves to be punished. And that's why he really beat Atticus, because deep down, you know, he thought that was how you were supposed to handle things. It's what he knew. And I think that's just such a sad thing to happen. And, you know, Montrose isn't always the most likable character, but you really do feel a lot of compassion for him here and understand like why he wound up the way he did.
Yeah, and this, you know, this really hit me on a personal level too, because, you know, I've talked in the podcast multiple times about the way I was raised by my father, and, you know, I know his past, and I know that what happened in his past is an explanation, but not an excuse.
Right.
And like, that's what they're giving you with Montrose. And they say it on the Lovecraft podcast too. Explanation, not an excuse. Like, it doesn't make it right. Like, you can break the cycle anytime, but it's like, all right, I see where that happened.
Yeah. It was just funny because I was watching it with my girlfriend, and I said it to her. I'm like, you know, he could have chosen to break the cycle with his son, and he didn't. Like, he kept it going. And it, you know, it forever damaged their relationship in a way that, you know, I don't think anything will ever fix it.
Did she have a take on it?
She just agreed.
Nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like, how do you go back and not help your parents though? You know what I mean? Like, like if you could go back and, you know, I actually don't know a lot about your parents, but like, if you could go back and like help your mom or help your dad, which would in turn help you and your brother, right? Like, how could, like, if I could go back in time and stop my grandmother from abusing my father, like, editor's note, it was actually my great-grandmother. So my father's grandmother was the one who abused him. I never actually met my grandmother, who was my father's mom. From what I gather, she was pretty cool, but I never met them. But it was my father's grandmother who took care of him or watched over him when he was a kid and abused him repeatedly. So there you go. Back to the podcast. How could, like, if I could go back in time and stop my grandmother from abusing my father, like stop the behaviors that would have turned him into who he was that would later shape me, like, how could I not, you know? But they got to watch, they got to remember their mission. Montrose leaves, and you think that he's leaving to go warn George about the future, so that way he'll survive, you know, kind of like they did in Back to the Future.
Yep.
And Tick has the genius idea of course, you know, let's split up.
Well, you know, like Tick's whole thing is that they don't know what's going to happen if they change the past. And he's so afraid that if anything does change, not only could he not be born, but then his son won't be born. And that's just not a risk that he's willing to take. He won't save these people because he won't risk changing the future and destroying his family's life.
Yeah, we see that Atticus is ready to make a lot of sacrifices for his son, which in a way makes him a lot like Montrose. And we don't see it right away, but it does. Now I have a, you know what? Let's get to it. And so there's this moment where Montrose makes his way to the park, and he sees this moment that he had as a young man with his boyfriend at the time.
I have this whole quote written down, by the way. So
tell me, say the quote then, please.
All right.
I love it.
So he wants to intervene. He's talking to his friend. He wants to help him, and he's trying to tell Atticus that this boy's going to die. And Atticus says, it doesn't matter, and Atticus is very angry. He says, when this is done, you and me, we're done, right? Like, we're going to finish this, and then we're not going to talk ever again. And his dad's trying to explain to him, he's like, this guy's,
mood, by the way, big mood.
I know, right? He's like, Montrose says, this kid's not important. He's nothing. He's like, he's just the first in a long list of sacrifices I made to be your father. And I think that kind of catches Atticus off guard a little bit. And then Montrose kind of takes a minute to explain, and trigger warning for a little bit of the language in here. But you see right there, I'm telling him we can't be friends no more because he's a faggot and I'm not. I lied to him and myself for so many years. I cut out all the soft parts of myself just to be a man because men have sons. I swallowed my pride when I found out your mother was pregnant and could be George's. You were my son. You had to be. I did it all, and I would do it all over again because the only thing I ever wanted was to be your father. And it's some powerful stuff there. He's talking about how he lied about his own truth and how it cost the life of someone he loved, and how it caused him to be so angry all the time. But as much as Atticus felt like I think Montrose didn't really love him, it was all Montrose really had, right? Like being his father was, it gave him purpose. It made him feel like a man. It was so important to him that no matter what happened, he could always say Atticus is my son, and he sacrificed a lot to do it. And again, that's not an excuse for what he did to Atticus. It's not Atticus's fault, right? Like nothing that happened to Montrose is his
Atticus
fault.
never asked for any of this. He never said, I want to be born so I can validate your masculinity. I can validate your life. I don't want your life.
Yeah, but like exactly, like you can't blame the child. It's never the child's fault. They are innocent of this. And I think that's one thing that Montrose has not really fully accepted, but it does really, really make you understand what, who he is and what's important to him. And, that he does love Atticus, maybe not all for the right reasons, but he is really important to him.
Yeah. And I mean, I've seen that personally too. Just, every time I would, back when I was still talking to my father, like when I would visit him and my mom, like, it was all like they somehow had my diplomas from some of my belt tests. They had pictures of me that like I didn't even think about. Certifications, because for a while I kept my stuff there while I was moving around, and they happened to hold on to a bunch of it. And like all of my accomplishments became my father's accomplishments. Because it was, wow, look at what my son did. Look, he graduated college. I never did that. Look, he fucking got a black belt. I never did that. Like everything I had ever done was for him, at least, to him, like, oh, wow, look at my son. And, sure enough, I haven't spoken to him since I've been on TV and stuff, but, oh, this is my son. He was on TV, stuff like that,
Yeah, I get that too. I mean, my dad, I talk to every once in a while. We have a okay relationship now, but I remember growing up, especially once my parents separated, and he'd ask me all the stuff going on in my life, and he always mentioned, oh, this way I could tell everyone at work, and I can tell my friends, I can tell the family, and he needed to get the gossip so he could talk about his kids and how much he knew about our lives, and me and my brother, and it's like you weren't really involved in it, but you want to tell everyone about it, so it makes you seem like you are a part of it. So I definitely understand where you and Atticus probably feel, so it's something I think we all have some daddy issues that we can relate to.
At least I don't have zaddy issues.
Hey.
No, but what's interesting? I didn't think about it until you just mentioned it too. But like, now that we're putting all the puzzle pieces together between Montrose and let's say your father too, like, imagine going to work and all of the heterosexual people there talking about their kids.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, is this something I'm kind of left out of now? No, I have kids. I can talk about my kids, even though I'm a gay man. Like, maybe it does mean more to let's say your father and Montrose than to you or I, because like it's kind of just expected of us as hetero men to have children at some point, but one, that's just kind of, maybe it's something that's a privilege that we're just not aware of as heterosexual men. That's
and for these my dad and Montrose, it's a beard, right? Like it's their way of hiding and not showing their true sexuality by saying, listen, I have a son, I'm a man, right? That's what Montrose said, because men have sons. So that's what proved that he was a man, and all the horrible things his father said to him weren't true because he had a son.
Wow. Well said, Ty. Well said. So when we're getting to this moment, we see that Montrose's boyfriend is, not only does he get, what a terrible day, not only does he get broken up with by probably the only boy he's ever loved because he's young, but then he gets called an N-word, hard R, the F-word, the homophobic one, and then shot in the head by some white supremacists who just come up, which, back then, just white people.
Pretty much.
You were the exception if you weren't a white supremacist and you were a Caucasian.
You were a weirdo.
But yeah, so he gets shot in the head. Very traumatizing moment for Montrose. The kid's brains are spattered all over his face, and they didn't shy away from this, and I'm so glad they didn't. They make it a point in the podcast, talk about how like they went where a lot of shows wouldn't have gone, and I'm glad that they did. I'm glad they show how graphic this stuff is, because you know what? It's not just something you see in a history book. Slavery isn't just something you see in a history book. It's something that happened for real.
Yeah.
People died from the pain of getting whipped. People died from the infections of the marks. People had to watch their families be sold off and separated and worse. Like,
I mean,
it's real.
They show
They
show the violence, and and they show Montrose. They show him shuddering in the back, and Atticus actually has to hold him up.
Oh my God!
He grabs him and holds him up. And, when I was watching, I was rewatching this episode yesterday, and I said to my girlfriend, I said, "Wow, I can't believe this really happened." I said, "This is just so fucking unbelievable that this has happened." And she said, "And slavery isn't?" And that was, an interesting question. And I said, yeah, you're right. Like slavery was this, but worse, right? But I think what makes this so shocking, besides the fact that we obviously learn about slavery growing up, and this was often not talked about, was that this was less than 100 years from our birth, right? It's in the same century,
shit.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's 1921. I was born in 89. Obviously there's some time there, but it wasn't like the 1800s or the 1700s. This is the 1900s. This is supposed to be the modern era, and this shit was still happening. And I think that's what just kind of blew my mind. I'm like, people I knew were alive during this time, like my great grandmother, who, I did meet before she passed away, she was alive during this. And it's...
Yeah, she killed people at the Tulsa... No, I'm kidding.
I mean, I made the same joke. I was like, she could have been there. I don't know. I really don't know.
Honestly, who does know?
I mean,
because even
knows?
Atticus's parents and stuff, like, they were... that was Oklahoma, and then they went to Chicago. Like,
yeah.
Where he was raised. So
we should have Pope back on here. Maybe his family was there.
Fucking probably, honestly. And then we should have Bronson on and see... And, too.
Oh, God. Maybe their families
their
intersected
ancestors
at some point.
murdered each other. back in Tulsa, in case you didn't listen to the earlier episodes, both Bronson and Pope both live in Oklahoma. One of them is white, one of them is black. So
they're all friends, and they gave us some information on some other episodes. So yeah.
Oh yeah, they did. Yeah, one of them was on 2 episodes, and the other, helped with the Watchmen one.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But yeah. So shortly after seeing his boyfriend get murdered, his brother and Dora, his neighbor, they were all very close, are now getting attacked by this mob in the park. Now, I have a question because I genuinely might have missed this earlier in the series.
Sure.
When did he mention the mysterious stranger? Did it just come up in this episode?
I don't remember, unfortunately.
Okay.
I was wondering the same thing. I was like, I don't know.
Were you hoping I would catch it? Because
I was, but
This came out of a fog that I've been in for the last 9 months, Ty.
Yeah, well, listen, like you said, there was a bit of time in between the episodes, so I don't know if they did mention it earlier. They may have, but they do talk about it here, how a mysterious stranger saved them. He came out swinging like Jackie Robinson, and I thought what was so cool about that is that in the first episode, during Atticus's dream sequence, Jackie Robinson shows up and saves him.
Yeah.
From Cthulhu, and it's very,
he says, "I got you, kid."
That was the foreshadowing for this moment. And nobody's coming to the rescue, right? They're getting beaten. George, Dora, and Montrose as children, and Atticus like, we did something wrong. We screwed something up. There's no stranger. And he steps forward and he kicks a bat, right? And then he realizes that he picks it up, and Montrose like, you're the mysterious stranger. And Atticus gets in there and starts fucking some white people up, and it was so badass. He takes out the gun, man, boom, right across the face with a bat.
So good.
I mean, he's just taking these guys out. I mean, again, he's a trained soldier, so he knows what he's doing. He's got the jump on him, and he's got something to fight for. So
he can bench press a goddamn car. He's got a lot of.
He's Black Superman, damn it! Of course he's gonna beat these guys.
He is. But yeah, so I imagine that it was in his dream because that's a story his father always told him as a kid. Yeah. This guy swinging like Jackie Robinson. So, he would literally interpret it as Jackie Robinson would show up and beat the shit out of Cthulhu whenever he was in his dreams. I would like to have seen more dream sequences. But yeah, so at this point I wasn't sure if they actually brought up who Jackie Robinson was supposed to represent before this episode or not. But either way, here he is. He's he beats the shit out of these people. He saves his family as as kids, the younger version of his family, and he says, "I got you, kid," and he gets out of there. And he should have also been like, "Oh, by the way, don't beat your son," and then gotten out of
there.
But
I think this proves that the future's set, right? Because this always happened. This was always going to happen.
Which I do like that version of time travel.
Yeah,
I genuinely do. Whatever. Let's not go off. I could talk about time travel. We'll do that when I do my Terminator mini review.
Yeah, and then we'll do Looper. Fucking yes. We'll do a whole time travel month.
Honestly,
we could.
Fuck it.
There's some good shit.
Why not? There's something in everything.
Tell us what you guys want. Otherwise, we're doing time travel month. So
tell us what you want us to review. Tell me what you want me to fuck. Oh my god. But yeah, and then also Letty is having this moment with, I want to say her name is Hannah, who
sounds right.
Who is Dora's mother or grandmother?
I think it's her grandmother.
She's Dora's grandmother. That's right. So Atticus is great grandmother. And
because Letitia has to explain to her who she is. She's like, I'm Dora's son's girlfriend. Like, it was just like, oh
yeah,
okay,
yeah. She explains it a little bit more.
Letitia gets chased down by a bunch of white people. She gets saved by Montrose's father, and then brought into the house, and the whole family's armed with guns, and they're all looking out the window and all this. But the grandmother's very suspicious of Letitia, who's wearing modern day, or at the least modern for the times kind of shoes.
Oh well, yeah. And while the black community was a victim of this riot, of this massacre, don't think that they weren't fighting back.
Yeah, at least 13 white people were killed, in the ensuing battle.
Yeah, so they were definitely fighting back as best they could, but And there, story-wise, there's a lot to go with the magic here, but basically, long story short, she gets the Book of Names, and listen to Lovecraft Country Radio podcast if you wanna get the specifics on that scene, because they go into it a lot better than we're going into it here. And maybe it's because we're men too. Honestly, it's probably because we're men that we're looking like at like the male stories and totally missing the women ones. I
think it was a little more emotional for me, I guess, because technically Letitia's not actually related to these people, and plus we have father issues, but what's interesting here is, Letitia is basically telling the grandmother that they're all going to burn to death in this house. The whole family dies here except for George, Dora, and
Montrose.
And Montrose. So it's that's in the grandmother's like, well, I can't just let these people die, and she says like you have to, because I'm pregnant. And if we don't get this book, someone else in the family, a young girl named Dee, is going to die. We need this book, and you just have to accept it.
Your great grandson, right?
Like this, this is your family too. But if you change anything, you're killing other members of your family. So, ultimately, she makes the decision to give Letitia the book, and she burns to death, I think, holding her hands, right? It's pretty fucked up, actually. Wow.
Because at this point, Letitia still has her invulnerability spell. So, nothing
so
can hurt
she's
her.
fine. And they actually, so they play this poem that I have here.
I was hoping that you would get it.
I got you.
Well done.
It's Catch the Fire by writer and activist Sonia Sanchez. And basically the significance behind Catch the Fire, it was published in Sanchez's 1995 poetry collection, Wounded in the House of a Friend. The poem encourages people to think about the incredible fire that kept past generations alive through slavery, racism, and the many socioeconomic challenges of being black. I mean, and that's basically it. It has some great lines. I have this great article that talks about it, so we'll link it in the show notes. I'm not going to read the whole poem, but yeah, it just talks about what it's like to be black and the fire of that. So it was perfectly, I think put over the scene, and it worked really well for me.
Yeah, as there's a literal fire encompassing.
Yeah, I love their use of, actual, poetry and songs and
modern
speeches,
day songs too.
They really use, from actual black people of the world, they bring it into the show and they put it over these scenes. And I think it just lends a very authentic, realism to what we're seeing. And so the scene was, it's very brutal watching her die, but it's also, in a way,
it's powerful.
Sad and powerful and beautiful and all these kind of things. And, basically Letitia walks out of this house and she's walking down the street, and the bombs are being dropped right by the airplanes all around her, and she's just unaffected by them.
This was so
totally
powerful.
Invulnerable.
I cried.
Oh really? You cried everything.
Yeah.
And she's holding the book. Meanwhile, Hippolyta is like, she's got these fucking things in her veins that are powering
she's
the
jacked
time
into the
machine.
system, bro.
Yeah, and she's like spitting out
battery.
like fucking
she's
gray
foaming.
liquid, and Atticus is like jumping back and forth trying to help her, and the portal's closing. He's like, we gotta wait. And there's a moment where Montrose is left behind. The portal actually closes, and he looks outside the window at Black Wall Street being burned down, and he sees all these people being killed, and he sees the fires, and he starts talking about all the people that died there, and I think he mentions Dr. Jackson, the best Negro surgeon in America, shot in the face. I think he says someone like Whitey Phelps, and he says, and worst of all, what they did to Commodore Knox. And Commodore Knox was a 20-year-old kid who was the last person killed in the Tulsa massacre. And and he's just reflecting on these people that died that he knew, and then he personally knew them, right? And then the portal opens, and Letitia and him make it through, and they have the book, and Atticus is clutching Hippolyta, and she's like, "Did you get it?" He's like, "Yeah, we fucking got it," and they're all very, very much emotionally and physically exhausted. Yeah. It's wow, what an episode.
Yeah. And I also want to mention that he also mentions Peg Leg Taylor, who they reference a few of these individuals in the Nerdist article too. Peg Leg Taylor is is known for his victorious stand with a machine gun. Legend suggests that he died during single-handed defense stand down, but Taylor allegedly survived the night. So, it seems to be a little bit of a gray area, but could you fucking imagine, just one dude with a machine gun be like, you motherfuckers, blah, 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 blah,
That's
blah.
pretty badass.
Taking him down, man. Like, oh my God. This was a very emotional episode for the characters, for the viewers, for the production team, for everybody. This is it's very powerful, and of course at the end of it, Hippolyta has extended herself beyond her limitations, and her hair turns blue. Now she resembles the character that her daughter Dee has come up with, the comic book character Orinthia Blue.
Right,
and we have some fun facts about her in episode 10 that I'm gonna tell.
All I know is I'm so thankful that this happened in 1921 and racism was extinguished in the 60s, and that's
after
why
that, it really was
just never happening. That's why Black Lives Matter doesn't make any sense, because racism died.
Again.
Unbelievable, huh?
Oh God.
or many people will try to tell you, but
yes,
it's fucking so
will.
wrong.
Well, they won't even quote that. They'll say slavery happened forever ago.
Oh
How does it
God,
matter
even
now?
worse, right? Like,
Yeah.
man.
That's what they'll say. But and once again, those are the so-called history buffs. But yeah, now we're on episode 10. Full circle. I will mention now that I do not like the trope of the magical pregnant woman. It was and I think it's just tired personally. And they they did make Letty an important character before she was pregnant, but it's kind of used so often that the character isn't important until she becomes pregnant. Even the Dark Tower series used this trope. For as great as that series is, it also has some ridiculous and sometimes problematic stuff. So, you can love something while noting that there are parts of it that could be better, which is said in the first episode of this whole show, right? When he talks about Lovecraft. But yeah, so basically this is culminating in which there's a lot of magic stuff going on. They end up conjuring up Titus, who kind of started this whole thing, and he was the owner, I believe, of the slave that Atticus keeps seeing in his visions, who once again is escaping a burning house. And they're able to conjure him and whoop the shit out of him in person, which was great. Because technically it's Titus.
Isn't that his relative?
Yeah, so the reason why Atticus has magical blood is because of Titus, because he gave that blood to the the love child that I don't even want to say love, the rape child that he had from his slaves.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Oh, and speaking of which, they made a really great comparison in the Lovecraft podcast between just kind of having access to stuff, because, Christina / William is the one who they go to for all the magic stuff because they know about magic best, right? But it's not that they're necessarily better with magic than any of the black people in the show. It's that they've just had access to it for a longer period of time. So when you do think about the socioeconomic disparities that still exist today between the white and black community, you think about opportunities, you think about different privileges. Like, you do have to realize that there is a head start that some people have over other groups.
Yes.
And and that in this show it's magic, but in real life it is, it's capitalism. They have a head start in capitalism.
Yeah.
They have, 400 years of free labor that helped build their country.
You can barely get by with a head start in capitalism. Can you imagine what it's like to not have that, right? You know what I mean? Like, seriously. Like, holy shit. Talk about like having your hands handcuffed behind your back, and it's just you just can't survive.
Now, watch the actual show, listen to the podcast, to the Lovecraft podcast. I didn't really get into the whole magic thing, and I did see that this was really nice to see that it was kind of like a reckoning of the racial sins of the past, like finally giving this dude his comeuppance. Speaking of another thing about the past, they did mention that in the last episode, in episode 9, that there was a quote which they couldn't find the person who said it, so I won't bother to either. But it was pretty much like, when you're healing certain things inside of yourself, like you're healing the trauma of your parents. They talk a lot about generational trauma and trauma bonding as well, which is, what kind of led George and Montrose and Dora to become so close to each other. They lived through that together. They bonded through that trauma.
Right.
And And it's similar to how you and I became friends, right? Like,
Yeah.
we, maybe not necessarily trauma, but we bonded through a very similar lifestyle growing up,
We did. Yeah. I mean, that's how we met, really, and became friends. So
if we both lived in the same school district, we probably would have been on a bus going to school, not, having to get there an hour early before everyone else.
We may never become friends. Who knows?
Oh, there's also a really nice moment I like here where they go into Letty's it's not a halfway house. What is it called? Letty's house for black people.
Yeah, I think she just has a house to help them out, and
yeah,
But
across the street, we see that what they were afraid of, what all the white people in the neighborhood were afraid of, is actually coming to fruition. That there's now a house that was for sale and a black family bought it. We have a link in the show notes just talking about the white flight. A brief introduction says that the white flight primarily took place in the post-war years, which is roughly from the 1940s through to the 70s. But it's important to look at adjacent and very much intertwined migration event known as the Great Migration, where 6 million black people from the South moved northward to flee persecution, so they left their rural homes behind for urban opportunities. And the Great Migration says occurred between 1916 and 1970. So because of black people moving into neighborhoods, I guess that's where the term "there goes the neighborhood" comes from.
Yeah.
They a bunch of white people were like, "Fuck this, we're out." So so they left. So that was a nice little. They didn't even mention the white flag in it, but I think that it was very purposeful that they showed a black family moving into a white neighborhood.
They were signaling that.
So we had this moment where Hippolyta and Dee have this reckoning, and Dee is very upset that her mother left. They make it a good point in the Lovecraft podcast, just mentioning how there is a consequence to not acknowledging young black girls and their problems, and that it's not just Hippolyta, it's everybody who didn't pay attention to her. They were all focusing on their own problems, and that's why Dee got attacked. Like they were all too caught up with their own shit, and they weren't looking after her. But that's a whole other thing. But she her mother Hippolyta brings this awesome, like, professionally done Orinthia Blue comic to her, and she's like, "Oh, where'd you learn how to draw like this?" And she's like, "Oh, well, I met someone named Afua," and that's kind of that. Dee also makes it a point to mention how she's never going to draw again because the arm that she was attacked in by the Pickaninny demons is just dead. That arm will never be of any use to her ever again. They'll get over it, trust me. But I looked it up. I said, is there an artist named Afua? Do you know who Afua is?
I do not.
Afua Richardson is an artist who actually did the art in the Lovecraft Country show. So, like, all the Orinthia Blue comics are her.
That's
her
cool.
art.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
she also did a bunch of art for Black Panther World of Wakanda, which was written by Ta-Nehisi Coates. And moreover, I met her.
What?
I met Afua Richardson at a convention, and I didn't make that connection. Yeah, man. I have a
you were like, "Hey, do you know when so and so is going to be back?" Are you just like part of the booth for them? Or
hey, can you tell me when Neil Adams is coming back to this booth? But no, she actually signed my World of Wakanda #1.
Oh, fuck yeah, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, and she has on her website how she helped even design like draw the maps for the show too, where they would like show what was dangerous and what wasn't.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, it really is. She also has like these really cool magnets. I have one of a mermaid that she did right on our refrigerator. So she was at, I want to say, Ace Comic Con, happened a few years ago, and they held it at Nassau Coliseum. Where I did also meet Neil Adams. But how cool is that? I was like, oh, get the fuck out of here.
Small world, man. Small world.
So a literal comic book artist, she met.
Nice touch.
So the big crux of this episode is that multiple people are coming together now, multiple people throughout the series, which is leading to the, trying to take down Christina and make sure she can't get her immortality.
Bringing all this whole family together, right? Like, I think even Gia, right? Doesn't
Gia.
Atticus goes to her and he makes amends, and to me it was kind of half-hearted because it's like he treated her like such shit till he needed her.
Yep.
But he's like, you are family. The connection we had was real. I'm so sorry. He holds her.
He's reading off of
hand.
notes he put on his hand.
Yeah, he's got
You are
flashcards.
family.
The waiter's behind him, like, like
holding up
motioning
sides.
with the-
It's Andrew Lincoln from Love Actually.
Yes.
To me, you are beautiful.
Yeah, he's holding her hand, telling her she's family, and she fucking buys it, man. I feel so bad. She really loves this dude because she's like, all right, good, I'm in. Let's go. I'm gonna jump in,
Son of a bitch.
with your fucking new girlfriend and your baby and everybody else. Oh, man.
It'll be great to see a bunch of humans who I will never be one of ever again because I am a 9-tailed demon spirit. But yeah, so everybody comes together. They're all traveling in George Freeman's car, which is now Hippolyta's car. It's the family car, if you will, the safe Negro travel car. And they have this really awesome scene where there's this song playing and they all start singing together, even though they know they're headed towards something terrible. And
that was a cute scene. I enjoyed it.
It was beautiful. My favorite part was when Montrose chimes in. Montrose and Hippolyta are why I watch this show.
Yeah, I would say honestly, Montrose is probably the best character. Not the best person, not my favorite person, but the best character. The one who's got the most layers, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when we say that, like, oh, Atticus isn't our favorite character, like Atticus was an asshole or whatever. That's like nothing against the show. The show is great because of it. Atticus is very well written, and he's very well acted by Jonathan Majors. Like,
absolutely. I cheer for him at times. There's times where I'm like, fuck yeah, Atticus, get in there, beat up those white supremacists, but there are times where he frustrates me very much so.
Yeah, and that's a testament to the power of the writing of this show.
Yeah, because it's being human, right? Like in real life, nobody's perfect. We all fuck up. We all make mistakes. We all disappoint the people in our lives. Unfortunately, when you watch a show and the character's perfect and you love them all the time, it's just not realistic. And that's what they're going for in the show. They want to make sure these are real, fleshed out characters.
Yeah, and they tried to kind of get the jump on Christina, putting a bunch of stuff in place beforehand, that was going to put her at a disadvantage, or she wouldn't actually be able to conjure the spell. But
yeah, I mean, well, we should probably talk about too the what happened with Ruby and Letitia, right? Because Ruby sides with Christina initially in episode 9. She leaves with her, and she even says to Letitia, "You should be getting in this fucking car too and getting out of here because Atticus' family is crazy and blah blah blah." And she goes with Christina, but Letitia and her meet up again in episode 10, and I think Letitia breaks down just exactly what Christina is trying to do and explains the whole situation to her, and it finally puts some doubt in Ruby's head, and Ruby and Christina have a scene together where you could tell Ruby's definitely questioning things and she's nervous, but she spins it very quickly, like, oh, I was just thinking about you and me. And they wound up kissing, right? It's her first time with a woman, because it's not in woman's body.
That's right.
It's Christina's body.
Their true selves.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where the scene ends for us, and you're not really sure if Ruby's being legitimate with her. Does she really have feelings for Christina? Is she really open to being with her now, or is she using her because she's trying to get more information for her sister? You're really not sure yet where she stands. You can tell that she's kind of torn between them because they're two people that mean a lot to her. And we find out later on that unfortunately Ruby was trying to help Letitia, and Christina caught her in the act and says she killed her, right? She says she
killed her, and she used her magic, her little potion to become Ruby and pose as her.
Now, the only thing is she, according to Christina, the person has to be in a vegetative state in order to take their body.
Yeah.
Form. So technically Ruby might be alive, right?
Yeah, I think she might be. I mean,
but, severely injured or incapacitated, but maybe still breathing at the very least.
In order for that. I mean, or she could have just taken her blood, killed her, and then she's only going to need the Ruby spell once, right?
That's true. That's true. Maybe that's it.
That's a possibility too. Now, here's my biggest issue with this episode is there's so much that happens off screen.
Mm.
And, they really try and put it in there. And, listen, nothing is ever so easy. Show business is fucking difficult. Entertainment is difficult. Maybe 10 episodes is all they got. So they're like, all right, we're putting it in there, and and so I'm not saying anything against the creators, but like at when this spell is finally happening, a little bit later on, like we see all these flashes of things that apparently happened before they even got into the fucking car.
Yeah.
And I couldn't make sense of all of them as they were going by. I would have had to pause each and every individual thing and be like, oh, what was that? What was that? And even the Lovecraft podcast episode, they didn't talk about it. Like, they didn't talk about the fact that that Atticus actually introduced D to the Shoggoth. The big, the animal with multiple eyes and ebony skin. They didn't discuss that at all. They just said that, oh yeah, Dee has a Shoggoth, watching over her while she's in the car. And but they have a quick shot of it. They have Atticus getting baptized, which for 10 seconds, let me talk about this. If you're a person of color who still subscribes to Christianity, I do not understand why. That is all I will say. Because historically, the entire reason that your ancestors have been oppressed is because of religion and or gold. Okay, when I think about the fact that my family comes from a place called the Dominican Republic, even that upsets me, because the whole reason it's called Dominican Republic is because of the Dominican priests who came and fucking renamed the thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's good point.
It would have still been Hispaniola or whatever they called it. You know what they fucking called it? Home. Like,
I think just like white people, though, everyone needs a guiding force in their life, and for a lot of people, that is religion, and that's God. You need to believe that there's some sort of eternal paradise when you're gone, and that there's somebody upstairs making the decisions for you. Because if you ever have to think about the fact that every choice really is your own, then you have to face the consequences of your own actions. And I think that's hard for humanity to really deal with.
Yeah, it is. Or, it's also difficult to say, how do I keep going on unless something else is there?
Yeah.
But, and I'm honestly not here to criticize religion. I do want to save that for our Punk Rock Jesus episode that we do at some point.
Fuck yeah.
Which I will make sure to have an actual, person who subscribes to the faith on the podcast, so we can kind of go back and forth and have a healthy dialogue.
Yeah,
but,
I'll see if Jesus is available. I'll try my best, but he's a busy guy.
They've been saying he's coming back for a while now.
Yeah, this could be his big comeback, actually. The Politipop Podcast.
Imagine. You heard it here first, folks. Jesus Christ. If Jesus did come back, he was probably fucking killed by a cop already. What do you fucking
Oh, man.
Like, let's be fucking real, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great comic book idea. Write that down. Jesus comes back, but he keeps getting murdered. Like, he's like, all right, I'll come back in the Middle East again. It'll be fine. Boom! Barack. Fucking drone bombed you. Drone strike. Like,
oh, man, that's so good. I love that.
Right?
5-part series.
Yeah, that's a solid 5-part series. You're right. It's healthy. But yeah, so if you are listening to this and you are Christian, I'm not trying to insult something that you hold so dear to you, but I do want to let you know that while you believe in your faith as being what guides you and what gives you strength, I believe that you are just a strong person. I believe that all of the great things that have happened in your life because of you working hard or whatever else it might be, that it's from you. It's from within. And if you need to tell yourself that it was a greater power, then that's absolutely fine. But do not doubt yourself. Have faith in who you are.
I think that's a great way of putting it. I've never been anti-religion, but I never believe that religion should dictate your actions, against other people. You should make those decisions yourself.
Bartolomé de las Casas, the whole reason why he still stuck up for the indigenous peoples of Hispaniola later on in his life was because he believed they could be converted. That was why. It was all about spreading the word of God. Even he was the world's, depending on who you ask, the world's first civil rights activist. It was all based on, I can convert these people to Christianity.
Yeah. He's like, whoa, don't kill them. We can make them into, fellow religious fanatics. Come on.
Yeah. And I mean, they were doing it while torturing them. He was like, guys, maybe we could do this without torturing them. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Remember, like we said, no one is entirely good or entirely bad, But
right.
that's for our Even the Rain episode. Let's go back in time.
Check it out.
Yeah. So yeah, once Letty does find out that Christina actually has taken her sister's body, they have this drag 'em out brawl, this fist fight.
It was pretty fun. I liked it.
Oh yeah, it was great, and I don't think it was intentional. But look up colorism if you haven't already. If you're a person who's not familiar with communities of color, there is this idea of light skin versus dark skin that does date back to the days of slavery, and it really comes from whoever the slave master raped. Their kids would be lighter skinned, and in turn would have better jobs as slaves, if you can. Such a thing exists. They would be working in the house while the other ones who were darker skinned would be working in the fields, and they would get harsher punishments. And so that kind of sparked this whole feud, which, while there is a lot of black unity today, like within every community, there's always infighting, even in the left. Go to fucking, left Twitter and find out. But yeah, so I was like, oh, I wonder if this is a representation of that. Misha Green did not mention it on the podcast, so probably not. But yeah, I said, oh shit, they killed Letty, you bastards. Yeah, she ends up throwing Letty off the tower. But we'll get to that in a sec.
Yeah, I mean, while I was there, I was like, all right, she's invulnerable though, right? And I was like, maybe Christina took the power back.
The invulnerability spell from her.
But she didn't.
Earlier she did, didn't she?
I guess not.
But there was like a different symbol on her when she came back.
I don't know.
Or some dude.
It was hard to follow.
The fucking magic. I'm in it for the social commentary, guys. I'm not in it for the magic.
Which is weird because I came for the magic. I stayed for the commentary.
Right. It's so funny. There's this funny moment where it's not funny, but they get Atticus in this contraption, and Christina tells him that Letty's dead. He can totally get out of it, and he's acting like he can't get out of it. Like, the things that are holding his hands down, he's holding onto them.
Dude, because his arm hurts if he lets go. He's keeping the blood flowing,
He could have taken his hands out. He could have fucking unbuckled the thing that was around his waist.
We've seen this dude fucking fight monsters hand to hand, and he's like, oh, shit, they tied me up. Damn it. Can't get out.
Oh, if you look back at that thing, I'll find it, I'll screenshot it and send it to you. You'll be like, yeah, he totally could have just let go of the handles.
What a
and
trooper.
also, so we also have Montrose, Gia, and Hippolyta taking down, taking on this mob that Christina has sent to apprehend them. This was underwhelming for me as well.
Yeah.
One of them is a Naruto, and the other one is a fucking mystical, multi-dimensional super soldier mother being. Like, I feel like
the other
she
one's
could
a
have thrown some
father.
Kamehamehas. Montrose did the most.
He did actually.
He was just an abused man, I
was like, come on, this is the best you guys can do, really?
That was a little underwhelming for me. I really would have loved to have seen what Hippolyta can really do after training with the Dahomey Amazons and fucking hanging out with Garnet from Steven Universe, and even give him a two-step, hit him with the Charleston that you learned from Josephine Baker.
I know something.
That'll
right?
show him.
Man.
That'll show him. And also we had this moment where Dee's in the car reading Lovecraft Country, and one of the Shoggoths attacks her because they're back at Artem, by the way. That's why they call the episode Full Circle. They're back at Artem, where George Freeman was killed in the second episode, where the house burns down in the second episode. It all goes back.
So that was a different one. I thought it was hers that was coming to the car, but I guess that was a different one, and hers kills it.
Yeah, it was a different Shoggoth, and then her, which, once again, I only know the name of because I listen to the podcast.
Yeah. I was like, those Lovecraft monsters.
That's what I was thinking. The big dog, I call them big dogs.
The Lovecraft dogs,
But yeah, so it was so funny. They called out one of the creators or one of the hosts. They were like, oh, the Black Shoggoth? And I was like, yeah, it is the Black Shoggoth because it's the black-skinned one that they summoned.
I would call them Cthulhu's bitches because they're dogs.
They are literal bitches. And of course, we had this moment where, and it dates back to what you and I mentioned with the first episode where the first few episodes where they talked about needing Atticus's blood. She fucking bleeds this kid dry. Boom.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Not across the street, right, not across the road, right down the street.
He lasts pretty long during that too. He's like, he's like waving around like,
seriously.
Holy, it's fucking gallons of blood pouring out of this dude's arms.
So much blood. So he keeps extra in his huge fucking muscles.
And of course makes all his loved ones watch as this this happens.
Yes, yeah. The mob finally overpowers the super soldier and Montrose and the Naruto and gets them, they all have to watch Atticus as he dies. So that way Christina can attain her immortality. And, so yeah, it goes back to that idea of, you will use black people for as long as they're useful, but you still will not advocate for them.
Right.
How many people get rich off of hip hop or NBA or NFL and still do not advocate for those individuals?
Yes, absolutely.
It's just something to keep in mind. Why do the coaches in football have, and by football I mean soccer, why do they have Black Lives Matter jackets on? Which I'm not sure if you've seen. D was watching women's football the other day, and I was like, oh shit! All of their coaches, by the way, have Black Lives Matter jackets on. None of the NFL fucking coaches do.
Interesting.
But that's the American team. The American football team. Okay, now it's getting confusing. The American soccer team, because American football is NFL.
Yes.
The American soccer team has, or the United States, I should say, has Black Lives Matter jackets on. I thought that was pretty awesome. And yet,
awesome.
The NFL. Whatever, you're gonna fucking
they do
appreciate black.
They do have the
helmets
in NFL. They have like the helmets all say like Black Lives Matter.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, they all have Black Lives Matter or like different slogans
cool.
and phrases that relate to the movement.
Oh, that's awesome. I can't breathe.
Yes, yeah, stuff like that. Yeah.
Fuck Whitey. Nice. I like it.
Did you say fuck Whitey?
Fuck Whitey I said fuck. That's something I made up.
Only Russell Wilson has that one.
Yeah, and I will say, it's my mantra. I say "fuck Whitey" to myself every time I wake up.
You look in the mirror, you're like, "Fuck Whitey."
Fuck Whitey. Okay, I might cut this out, but sometimes, yeah.
I feel that. I'm ashamed sometimes.
You're a fucking ally. You obviously don't have to be, and I'm sure like your ancestors. Did they come after all that shit? Like, if you're Italian,
listen, I can't make up for what they did, but I'm incredibly disappointed with certain things I said and did in the past, and that's the stuff that bothers me. I wish am I. Wish I knew better back then, because I think it was ignorance. That's why I always believe.
Yeah, and I think a part of it comes unfortunately. Being born to a father of color, I was still raised as a white kid because he was very ashamed of his heritage because he wanted to get along in white America. I think it was a survival mechanism for my father. But like now that I'm learning all of this history about the destruction of the Indies and Hispaniola and everything, like I don't know, I'm upset at my privilege. I feel guilty about it because while technically I am a part of this fight, while somewhere I do have Taino blood and African blood running through my veins, I am a white man.
Yeah.
And, and part of me does feel guilty for that. And, and when I think back to like, hey, the whole reason my family speaks Spanish is because the people who destroyed our ancestors made them speak Spanish.
Yep.
And even if you go back to the Dominican Republic, there was one of their presidents who intentionally tried to whiten the race. He forbade darker-skinned people from procreating with darker-skinned people because he wanted
everyone to have lighter skin, right?
Yeah, he wanted a lighter, whiter Dominican race. And, I think that's part of also where I come from because my father, like, you can tell he's darker, but when he was a kid, he was very white. Like, he had very light skin, so, and it does feel weird. Like my family and I love each other. I mean, you saw us at the fucking wedding, right? We're all dancing and everything, doing our Latin shit, but no matter what, I will never have to worry about the same things they have to worry about as both a man and a white man at that. And,
I mean, the difference for you and me is, when we're tired, when we're mentally exhausted from this fight, we can turn around and forget about it for a day and just go about our lives without ever having to worry. They have to live it every minute of every day. And they don't get that chance to say, oh, I'm tired of this, can we just, let it go for a little bit because it's always after them, and I think that's something that I've come to realize, because I think this has been a mentally exhausting year for a lot of people. And a lot of that has been, for me, I think you as well, our political and social journeys, so that shit takes a toll on you. But again, if there's a day where I'm like, fuck, I can't do this right now, I can just pretend like, it's not happening, and that's my privilege. That's something that I'm very fortunate to be able to do, and that's why I've been trying harder and harder not to, as much as it's exhausting. I'm like, I can't pretend it doesn't exist, because, racism's real. Capitalism is fucking real. This is all real. It's real stuff.
Good on you, man. No, that is very well said. I completely agree.
Yeah.
So after this whole fucking ordeal, it turns
so
out
Letitia
that
shows up, right? Yeah, she shows up.
Yeah, it turns out that Letty's still alive.
I'm wondering, like, is it her kid that had the spell? I don't know what.
I fucking bet. I bet the reason she lived is because of her magical child. I fucking
the magic.
All it gets.
But like she like stabs Christina through the back, but Christina's already done the ritual, right? Atticus is dead. She's taking the immortality, and she's like, "Oh, it doesn't matter. You can kill me all you want. I'm just gonna keep coming back." Until Kurama, the nine-tailed fox, gets involved, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. It was Kurama before Naruto was one of them, right?
Yeah. Well, Naruto's fox demon is named Kurama as well because it means fox. So
Ooh.
yeah. So
real quick, you know what's really funny? I looked up why did Letty come back, forgetting that in Fast and the Furious, Letty also came back as a character. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
She got in the car, started driving. What the fuck? Yeah. So finally, we realize why Atticus brought Gia, because he needed her to come here, and I don't really understand what she did. Because like the moon was involved. There's a lot of magic, guys. If you're really into magic, check this episode out. Tweet at us. Let us know what the fuck was happening, because I started losing it. But she used her fox powers to help, I guess, reverse the spell. She's magical and stuff, and they're able to successfully fuck Christina's day up and make her not so invulnerable anymore. But unfortunately, Atticus is dead, and he is not coming back as of the end of the season. And I think he knew that, right? Like he went into this knowing he was going to die. That was his fate, and he accepted that because his son was more important to him than his own life. And he left a letter, I think, for his dad and the rest of his family, explaining that he knew this was coming. They knew we were coming, and he does die, and he's ready to accept that. And the episode kind of ends in a very heartfelt, emotional way as they take him down, they're taking his body, and they're leaving, and just as they do, Dee shows up, right, with her mechanical arm.
Fuck yeah, she does.
And her little Cthulhu dog. And Christina's like, somebody there, help me. And does she like snap her neck or like breaks her? I don't know. She does some crazy stuff with her arm.
So this choice is talked about in the Lovecraft podcast.
Nice.
And they say it's because, so they're talking about how they make a story about revolutionaries, but there's this whole concept of peaceful revolution that's always put out in mainstream media, right? Like it has to be peaceful, blah, 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 all this other shit. But they say in the podcast themselves that like any revolution or protest that's ever brought about anything has had violence in it.
Yep.
And that's, we talk about in the last episode, they had that poem. They were talking, Nat Turner is mentioned in that poem. Nat Turner fucking took a bunch of hatchets and rebelled. Yes, violence does have to happen. And for people, once again, to criticize rioting but be pro-military industrial complex, don't you dare. Don't you dare tell me, oh, violence doesn't solve anything, blah, 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 blah. No, you're pro-violence when it's people across, when it's people bombing brown people.
Yeah.
So don't tell me that violence doesn't solve anything. Don't tell me the Civil Rights Act didn't get passed until after a riot happened after MLK Jr.'s death. Like don't fucking do that. But
peace brings nothing. It just doesn't.
Yeah, and Frederick Douglass also said, power concedes nothing without demand. So just keep that in mind. But they say that it's the next generation, which is so funny because you and I talk about that a lot with the Bong Joon-ho films, and when we did our Class trilogy, that it is the next generation. They say in the Lovecraft podcast, the next generation is the double tap generation.
The double tap generation.
The double tap generation.
Damn.
If they're down, make sure they're down.
Like
and
that.
so, so not only has Christina lost her magic, not only has every white person lost their magic all throughout the world. Letty says I blocked off every white person from using magic, which in a way is kind of just like reparations, right?
Yeah.
Like, guess what? We're taking the power back, literally.
Giving black magic, a new name.
Yeah, exactly. And now we can fucking prosper, bro.
Yep.
Like, that's. But yeah, so D is not gonna let Christina live. She has her fucking Battle Angel Alita mech arm. She not only chokes her out, but then all of a sudden just explodes her throat by crushing it with her fist as the Shoggoth fucking howls into the night in the background, and that's how credits roll.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, all right, what a way to end it.
There's no afterwards. We don't get to see Montrose being a grandfather and living, being the father he actually wanted to be. We don't get to see any of that.
I think if there's a season 2, they're going to do some sort of jump forward in time a little bit, would be my guess. Seeing the baby early born and things like that. Seeing how the world is with black people having magic, and that's my feeling, but we'll see. I don't know. I don't think they've announced season 2, but I wouldn't be shocked if we get one.
Yeah, and so I did find a bit about Letty coming back, and according to this article, I'll link to it. I believe it's just called "How Letty Came Back to Life." According to Insider. They say that it's not really explained much further, though, and it's unclear why Christina would heal Letty when she knew that Letty could potentially hinder her magic. So it turns out that the Mark of Cain, not only was it taken away from her by Christina, but it was apparently given back at some point. And I guess we just have to assume that it's because Christina promised Ruby that she wouldn't kill Letty.
Interesting. Yeah.
I don't know. And even just this article is kind of positing it. There are people tweeting about, like, when did Letty get the Mark of Cain back? So, whatever. It just is what it is. But yeah, so before we finish this, what are your favorite moments from this show?
Favorite moments, I think just episodes I really enjoyed. I enjoyed episode 9, seeing Tulsa. I think they did some really good stuff there. I really enjoyed pretty much everything with Montrose. I think he was a great addition to the cast, and seeing his journey to being real to himself and to his son. I enjoyed a lot of what we saw in the Korean War. I think that was so important to focus on that. It's something that a lot of, I think, American citizens don't know a lot about, and seeing Jia and how her people were treated and communists were treated, right? And they were brutally murdered and abused. I thought that stuff was great. And just seeing black people being the focus and what they've had to deal with.
Just for a second I thought you were just seeing black people. It was great.
I just love seeing black people.
I did say you were an ally, so that's fair.
No, just seeing them be the focus and obviously a lot of what we see in the show is them being abused and things, but there's times where we just see them enjoying music and being around each other and having a family. So I guess those are the things I enjoyed. I really enjoyed when they delved into history and the world around them, and that was what I thought was the most authentic part of the show. How about you?
I'm pretty much in line with you there. I really liked the exorcism that happens at the end of episode 3. That was just a powerful moment for me. I loved the flashback to Tulsa 1921.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't really a flashback. It literally was just time travel. I Am with Hippolyta was probably my favorite moment of the whole series. And all of episode 6 was great. And which, by the way, in the car when they're all singing along, Gia knows the song because she is such an American file, if you can call it that. Like, she loves all the movies and media that the United States puts out. So
she was honestly one of my favorite characters. I really wish I gotten to spend a little more time with her. She was fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. Topsy and Bopsy chasing down D. That was just so frightening.
One of the scariest things I've seen in a while. Like, wow, it was
right?
eerie.
man, they brought it home. They did it so very well.
Well, look, CGI monster just can't do with what a little makeup and some good acting can.
No, they really can't. And the more it's Star Wars season again, so I'm getting back into that, and it's just seeing the difference between practical effects and not, or even like where I just went back to The Mandalorian, and like it makes such a difference, man. Instead of making Baby Yoda digital, they made him a puppet, and making all the other characters puppets, and using CG only when they really have to. I really think it hammers it home, and it helps add to the the authenticity of it. But yeah. Oh, I also had another fun fact about the last episode. Originally, they had sandbags on the gurney under the blanket when they were carrying Atticus's corpse.
Oh, really?
But it was actually Michael Kenneth Williams who suggested that they, for one take, carry Jonathan Major's actual body. And that was the take they used because it was the realest. It was all of them just carrying someone who they loved, and now they had to say goodbye to.
That's actually really cool.
A scene. Yeah, that was also mentioned on the Lovecraft podcast. But yeah. Oh, also the episode of Ruby becoming Dell. I loved Ruby, fitting in with the white folks and everything, because I live that fucking every day of my life.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea. I just think a lot of those kind of stories wound up taking so much time away that when it came to the plot of the whole season as a whole, that's why it was so rushed at the very end. You know what I mean?
No, I agree with that.
I think a little more balancing would have helped, but I think those were all really great moments to really highlight, obviously racism and just what was going on in the world then and still today.
Yeah, I'd say probably episodes 6 and 7 are my favorite as of now, and not to 6, 7, 9.
Yeah.
6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
6 and 9
great,
are mine. I like 7 too, though.
Yeah.
Good.
Discussing Emmett Till and everything. There's overall just awesome season, and there was some stuff to be desired, as I mentioned before, but in a world full of shit we fucking hate, let's talk about what we do like about it, right? So
that's right.
So with that being said, Ty, what are we reviewing next week?
Batman Returns, one of our favorite Christmas movies.
Oh, I didn't know you liked it too. That's awesome.
I don't love it as much as you do, but I loved it as a kid, so it'll be fun to delve back in.
I didn't like it until after I grew up because it scared the shit out of me as a child.
Oh, see, I loved it, and then my love went to you when you became an adult. Now you love it, so there we go. Perfect.
But yeah, so we are going to be doing a couple of Christmas movies this month. So next week we'll be doing Batman Returns. The week after that we will be reviewing The Grinch, and just covering themes of capitalism and consumerism and stuff like that. But yeah, Batman Returns is one of my all-time favorite Christmas films. It's one of the ones that I have to watch every year, and more so just because it's a Batman movie that takes place during Christmas. But don't tell anybody about that. Remember that you can listen to us, rate and review us on a variety of different podcatchers, especially Apple Podcasts. Please make sure that you leave a 5-star rating and review. It really helps out the podcast. Once again, your homework is to find one person that you know and tell them about this podcast. See if they'll listen to one episode. It really helps a lot. You want to contact us, interact with us, you can find us on Twitter at Politipop Pod, Instagram at Politipop Podcast, email us at politipopcast@gmail.com, and I always recommend this. You can find our show notes and sources at politipoppodcast.wordpress.com. As for the Patreon, we are still putting up the audio booch, How to Survive Anything, Anywhere. And this week you'll be able to see Chapter 4 of How to Survive Anything, Anywhere, Planning and Preparation, where they talk about learning about the places you're going to be visiting so you're prepared to survive, and also problematic stuff regarding other countries. The guy's like, they hate women here, so you got to wear this. This guy trains Marines and shit. So, and also it's from 2004. So some of those laws and political commentary on other countries might be outdated. But yeah, you'll also find a lot of other great content on our Patreon, bonus content and stuff. And for as little as $3 a month, you can become a patron and help support the podcast. And as for you, the listener, right now, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. I'm just going to tell you that for the Politipop Podcast, I've been Mike.
I've been Ty.
And no matter what your reading, watching, listening to, no matter what you're buying this holiday season, remember to never stop thinking, never stop learning, and please, for the sake of everyone, read between the lines.
And scene.
There. Oh, I heard the click after. Perfect. I love it.